Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. I'm Elizabeth Townsend-Gard. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School, and I just want to quilt. So today we're speaking with Chawne Kimber. Chawne Kimber is a math professor, but she is her work is just stunning. It is emotional, it is provocative, it's cool. Sometimes it has naughty words in it. She is just amazing. I mean, her work is just incredible. It is truly, truly amazing. So she talks to us about her work, and she's just incredible. So we're thrilled to be able to talk with her. So for Chawne, we go through a lot of photos on her website. So if you're interested in following along, her website is Chawne Complete, so that's CAUCHY Complete, COMPLETE.wordpress.com. There's also a link to her webpage on our webpage about her at JustWannaQuilt.com. So we do talk a lot about different images, and we're going through her gallery. So if you want to take a look at that as we're going. We start at the very bottom of the gallery page, and we kind of work our way up her work.
Okay, I'm Chawne Kimber, and I'm calling from Easton, Pennsylvania.
Awesome. And tell me your first memory. It's a question we always start with, which is tell me your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life.
I'd have to say it would be me sewing, actually. On my mother's side, her aunts and her mother were all seamstresses for the local department store, which was a rather high-level job for Black women to get in at that time. But I never saw them sewing because they were very old by the time I came around. My grandmother on my father's side also sewed a lot, but I never saw her sewing. So it was actually in 9th grade when I took in Florida, everybody has to take this class called Life Management Skills, which is kind of what the title says, but it's like everybody had to bake chocolate chip cookies. We had to that's when the drug education happened.
Interesting.
And then we all had to sew a pillow. You had to learn how to sew buttons and just the basics of survival.
Okay.
And then that was a 1-semester class. And then that teacher offered a 2nd semester called Clothing and Textiles that you could go on, and everybody in that class had to sew a pair of pants and a collared shirt. And, there are not a lot of half-credit classes in our school, so I just went ahead and took that. It was almost on a dare because I didn't really like the teacher, but my friend thought, well, we could just terrorize her for a semester. But I ended up starting to super love her once I got into this sewing class. I'm like, teach me more. And I wanted to spend more and more time with her to, make sure I got everything I could out of the class. So oddly, my first reflection on actual sewing is just when I started doing it from a class.
That's really interesting. And then tell me about so when did you start quilting? Let me ask you that quick question.
Yeah, so I sewed formal dresses in high school. So I didn't start quilting until about 2005 when I applied for tenure. I'm also a professor.
Yes, that was my next question. I actually interrupted myself to be like, okay, well, we'll ask a couple quilting questions before we get into the tenure questions.
Yeah.
So you started. So tell me. So I interrupted myself. Yeah. Continue.
Right. So tenure is kind of a hazing process.
It is a hazing process. It's a horrible thing, right? I mean, it's great in the end, right?
Yeah.
A tenure job is really important.
Right.
But it's brutal.
You're on probation for 5 or 6 years, and then you put in this giant application that's like thousands of pages long, and it's all out of your hands at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so it's super crazy. But then I'm in a male-dominated profession.
Me too.
I should say a white male dominated profession,
Me
because
too.
it's sort of a double
Right.
jeopardy for me.
Yeah.
And so it was even harder. Like, I wasn't totally sure that my people understood how my job differed from theirs. Not that I needed them to, but because I still achieved the same amount as a professor as everybody else. But I wanted them to perhaps have some sense that my job was different. There
Yeah.
were
And
extra demands on me.
so tell me first of all, let's go back just a little bit. So
Mhm.
you have a PhD in math, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really, you're super smart. And like math is hard. And tell me about like being the roads being a math professor. I think that's really interesting. And why was it different? I feel like my road is different too as a law professor. Still, ours is again a white male dominated, very traditional law is very traditional. And I do a lot of weird, not traditional things like a quilting
Yeah.
project or my last project. And so I felt like every time they thought that I was cute, but they weren't quite sure what to do with me. That would be my whole life.
Yeah.
How did you tell me a little bit more about that side of your life, and then we'll go back to the quilting side. If
Well,
you're
so
okay
I'm
with that.
not first generation college. My parents did go to college. They both earned master's degrees in psychology, but they had very little choice on what schools they could go to. So they did end up going to HBCUs in the South. And they had this sense that school choice wasn't necessarily open to their kids. So I knew I was going to go to state school. And then on top of that, like, they looked to their people of their generation in our family who had achieved more. And by achievement, they were kind of measuring by income. And
Yeah.
so I have an uncle who is an electrical engineer who went to Stanford, and he was definitely the highest earner in the family. So basically, I was told I was going to state school and I was going to major in engineering. And that's, common from first generation families, is that you definitely want that this effort that you're taking to go to college is going to make you make a step up socioeconomically.
Yeah.
Not based on interest.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't out of the realm. Like, I was definitely more of a sciencey kid, but it wasn't like I had thought through what engineering actually meant, what taking those classes meant.
Yeah.
But you take a lot of math classes, and it turned out that I was just meeting some amazing human beings who were my professors in the math classes. And the math classes were smaller. So I went to University of Florida, where the classes are ginormous. But because I was more advanced in the math, I was into, the 30 student sections as opposed to the 500 student lectures, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely knew my professors. They talked to me one-to-one as a person. I wasn't just my student ID number to them.
Yeah.
And so it was partially a happenstance thing. But then once you get a certain distance into math, it's not about getting the right answer. It's more of a philosophical enterprise in theoretical math. And there's not one right way to do it. And so there was a freedom that was more open to me there than in some of the other sort of intro classes you need for engineering. And so because my professors thought I was a person,
That's awesome.
and they were very much interested in the way that I could do things myself, I ended up just kind of switching over to math.
And continuing.
Well, yeah, and I kept going. It then becomes path of least resistance. So in the early 90s, when I was graduating from undergrad, the job market was terrible. And so a lot of us just kept going to grad school because it was a path.
Yeah. Interesting. And so is there any way for us to understand what you do in math? Like, can you explain it to us regular not math people?
You might enjoy a different conversation.
Tell me. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, no, I just mean no, let's not
Oh,
go
no,
there.
you can't. Yeah. So I feel
Yeah,
that way sometimes. Yeah. So it's complicated. So yeah, I've been doing the same project, my other work for 10 years. And so people will be like, oh, well, tell me what you do. I'm like, well, it's complicated.
yes.
And you won't like me very much after I tell you about it because it will make you very bored and irritated.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, let's stay friends.
Let's stay friends. I agree. Well, you got through the tenure. Are you through tenure now? Or where are you in your tenure process?
Oh yeah, I'm a full professor.
You are too. Me too. How
Yay,
awesome is that, right?
Yay, woohoo. Yeah, it's really nice to kind of reach the pinnacle, and then
Yeah.
no one can lord anything over you anymore. Like
That's right.
it's very freeing, and
Yeah.
it's great.
Because, like, the thing is that everybody judges you your whole life, like in grad school, in getting a job, in how your students feel about you, the work you're doing, and then you get to a full professor and nobody's judging anymore.
Well,
You
they're
know?
still judging you
I mean, they
'cause
are, but they can't,
little people.
they're not judging in a way that, like, they're going to vote on you judging. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
exactly.
Yeah,
No
that's what I mean.
consequences.
They can judge
Yeah,
all they want. It's just that they're not going to vote on you and say, well, I don't know if she's achieved the proper standard for our institution.
exactly.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so quilting. So
Oh yeah.
you're a mad scientist, genius in math, and you quilt. So tell me about the quilting side of your life.
Yeah, so I started quilting during that 10-year process because I needed a place where I could control things, right?
Yeah.
And so I get to choose the colors, I get to choose the pattern. And I just got this $50 Brother machine that my sister sent me on a dare actually. And I got the yellow book called Quilting for Dummies.
Awesome.
And yeah, and I'm a super nerd, so I did every single project in the book. And but what better way to gain all the basic skills you need so that you can then go on to do whatever comes to your mind,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I ended up. So that first year, I made 10 quilts, and they were all super traditional, just kind of practicing getting those bias on half square triangles just perfect, and learning how to make sure I'm matching all my points, and getting all the skills really well honed.
Now let me ask
And
you a
then,
question. Is that what year were you doing that? Was that 2005?
yes.
And that's if you go all the way down. If anyone's looking at your website, tell me your website
It's
is
Complete, CAUCHY complete, all
right.
one word, at .wordpress.com. And it's, by the way, Koshi is a dead mathematician. So
Nice.
I'm a nerd all the way through.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
there's a page there called Quilts.
Right, and it's at the very bottom. So that's why the bottom one is. And are these the ones that came out of the Quilting for Dummies book, or these?
No,
these are new
Quilting
ones.
for
These are the ones
Dummies,
after that.
those aren't on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why. So you've got really traditional, incredibly beautiful, precise quilting that you're doing in 2005, 2006. It's very traditional, and you're mastering. Oops, getting back that was weird. You're mastering mastering quilting. Would you say that's what's happening?
Yes, right. And and also you'll want to notice most of them are like blue and white.
Yeah.
And that's because I would sew only between 1 and 2 a.m. after work, right? So you do your 8 hours in the office, then you go home and you do your 8 hours at work, at home, of work at home. And then, so you're at 1 a.m. So maybe you have an hour where you're awake enough not to injure yourself while
You
sewing.
are so, that is so my life. It's still my life. I feel like, but the difference between you and me is that at 1 to 2 a.m. you actually could be precise. I find I'm just such a mess I really feel like that's my problem. But now you tell me that's not my problem because you make very beautiful things at 1 a.m. at the end of a 16-hour day.
Yeah, just practice though.
Yeah, your stuff is so cool. I
Thank
love your stuff. I mean, the 500 pyramids is awesome. That's so clever and so cool.
Yeah, and so you can tell that I wasn't very audacious with my color choices because I wanted to make sure that with such limited sewing time, I wanted to make sure whatever I did would work out color-wise.
Yeah.
And then I got the call from the provost saying that I got tenure, and then
Yeah,
I stopped sewing. I didn't sew again for 2 years.
really?
You might also notice there's like a 2 year gap
Yeah.
in
And
the
what
quilt.
year is that?
So I came back in '07. So
Uh-huh.
maybe the first finished quilt was in '08.
Interesting. Right. There's a gap.
And that was because my dad passed away.
Oh.